whenever you're ready, I can start the...
Okay.
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Can I see? Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Taeve Doty, and my topic for our water paper was the dispute between Costa Rica and Nicaragua. Well, this... It's the next one.
Yep. Just tell me next.
Okay. So this dispute has quite a lengthy historical context. In 1821, Nicaragua and Costa Rica gained their independence from Spain, and they've been pretty much fighting about their boundary ever since. In 1858, the countries came together and formed the Treaty of Limits, and that went through and determined the boundary between Costa Rica and Nicaragua. But then over the next 30 years, they were disputing about what the terms of the treaty actually meant. And so in 1888, they contacted the United States and asked them to serve as an arbiter between the two. And President Cleveland determined that Costa Rica and Nicaragua, the San Juan River is a little bit of a different river course than what we've previously studied, because the San Juan River, where it meets the Caribbean Ocean or the Caribbean Sea, Nicaragua has sovereignty over the river, but then Costa Rica has the rights of free navigation. And so they have gone back and forth about what that actually means to have navigable rights for commerce. So in 1888, President Cleveland further determined that Costa Rica does have rights to navigate the river for commerce, and later in the 2009 case, it came up what actually the objects of commerce actually mean. In 1897, President Cleveland appointed Edward Alexander to go down to Costa Rica and map out the boundary. And what he, I believe it's...
Next slide.
I should have put it there, but whenever, let me just go back, sorry. Whenever Alexander, he actually determined that the part of the land in dispute between the two countries actually did belong to Costa Rica in his opinion, and he determined the boundary to be the right bank of the river, which President Cleveland had said before in 1888. So then in 1916, this was the first time that the dispute came before one of the courts. It was the Central American Court of Justice, and Nicaragua made a deal with the United States that it would have proprietary rights to form an interoceanic canal across Nicaragua from the Pacific Ocean to the Caribbean Ocean, or the Caribbean Sea. And Costa Rica wasn't happy about that because it would involve the San Juan River. And so they brought the case before the Central American Court, and the court determined that Nicaragua did violate the treaty limits and that the treaty was not okay. So then everything was pretty much okay until 1987, whenever they went before the International Court of Justice for the very first time. And this dispute came up because in Costa Rica, there were some armed bands of what they called Contras, and they were attacking Nicaragua, and Nicaragua was upset about it. So they brought the case before the International Court, and then in 1987, Nicaragua dismissed their claims because the 5 countries in South or in Central America were going to work together. Then the next case that we have is the 2009 dispute between Costa Rica and Nicaragua. And in that case, in the late 1990s, Nicaragua started charging Costa Rican vessels to be able to use the river, and it went so far as they were making the Costa Rican vessels, they had to stop at these military sites and be inspected, and then if any tourists were on the vessels, they had to get a visa from Nicaragua to be on the river, and then they also made them buy tourist cards. And so Costa Rica was unhappy about this. They said it violated the 1858 Treaty of Limits because they had use of free navigation on the river, and that Nicaragua was violating it. So the court determined later that, or in the 2009 case, that Nicaragua could not require the Costa Rican tourist on the vessels exercising their free right of navigation to purchase these tourist cards or to obtain Nicaraguan visas, and that the Costa Rican vessels, they could have to have a Nicaraguan flag but they had the free right of navigation on the river and to stop on the banks. And for the people that were living on the right bank of the river that are actually in Costa Rica, able to fish for subsistence fishing, but not for commercial fishing. And that the people living on the bank of the river also had access for transportation because it's a very underdeveloped part of Costa Rica. And then, which that brings us to today, where the court finally finished its hearings in 2015 in May, and we're still waiting to see what the court's going to say. So Costa Rica and Nicaragua have gone back and forth. Costa Rica built, can we go prior to the slides?
Okay.
Sorry.
Where did you want to go to?
We can talk about it. So the disputed area you can see on the slides, it's Isla Calera, and that's what the two countries are fighting about. Nicaragua says it belongs to it, and then Costa Rica claims it's territory. But if you look at the border that's marked the 1888 Cleveland Award that shows the border on the right-hand side of the river, that is consistent with the Cleveland Award and also with the Alexander Award. But Nicaragua is still claiming that it's its property. They've sent troops back and forth to the region. I don't believe there are currently any troops there. But you can see where Nicaragua decided to build a canal across Costa Rican's territory, and this canal goes through wetlands. And so in 2010, the Costa Rica contacted the Ramsar Convention. The Ramsar Convention is an international, organization that was signed in 1971 in Ramsar, Iraq, and it is designed to promote the wetlands and keeping them healthy. And so they sent a group to study this canal and its environmental impact in 2010, and they determined that it actually was the canal. That the canal did cause deforestation, and it was upsetting the ecosystem there. So can we go to the next one? So you can see in this slide, Castillo Viejo, where it's marked on the map, that is where the Cleveland Award said, or it started marking the boundary between the two countries, and then the Ramsar site, 1138, and, the other one should be 811. The top one is the Refuge Center, and the other one is farther down. We get the next one. And the Ramsar Convention did determine that Nicaragua's actions had caused damage to the wetlands, and you can see those two red lines are where Nicaragua is building canals across the wetlands and destroying the forest and really disrupting the ecosystem there. Can we go to the next one? So this is a picture of the canal from Costa Rica's side. Nicaragua just went in and cut down trees, and they were trying to make a canal from the San Juan River to the Caribbean Sea for navigation and for commercial purposes. We'll get the next one. And then you can see from June 30th to September 5th the progress that Nicaragua made building the canal and how many of the trees that they did destroy there. We can go to the next one. In April of this year, Costa Rica, even though the territory is disputed, started trying to repair the wetlands, and you can see in April 2015 to November 2015 that their efforts seem to be working, and while the vegetation isn't completely growing back, all the way down into the wetlands, it is repairing the surface. We can go to the next one. So this is the road construction. Costa Rica then decided to build a road on its side of the river, and as you can see in this picture, this is the picture provided by Costa Rica, and it looks like a really nice road until you go to the next one. This is the picture that is provided by Nicaragua. So you can see how the two sides are trying to show their side of the debate. The road, it's not pavement or anything, and so whenever it rains, the sediment from the road is washing into the river, and Nicaragua is saying it's causing increased sediment, and that as they constructed the road, that they dumped a lot of trees into the river. So what comes up with these two situations, I think the court will look to the no significant harm rule and determine from each side whether constructing the road and constructing the canal, how much damage and harm that it actually caused, and then come up with remedies based on that, and also the reasonable and equitable utilization. this area where the road is built, there are about 500 inhabitants, and not everyone is Costa Rican. So, and the area is also exporting pineapples. They're one of the largest pineapple exporters. So if you go to the next, these are just pictures of them constructing the road and all the trees that Costa Rica actually destroyed. You can see in the left-hand picture that that's on the side of a hill, and a lot of that sediment is going to wash into the river. So Nicaragua does have a valid claim there that it could cause decreased water quality for the aquatic life and other animals that live in this. And it's also a protected wetland under Ramsar and a national refuge. Can we go to the next one? These are pictures that were provided by Nicaragua to the International Court. One of their claims was that heavy machinery was being used to build the road, and you can see in this picture that they were using some sort of bulldozer there, and a lot of the sediment could wash into the river. Can we go to the next one? And this is what the road looks like. It's really close to the river. It is a dirt road, so it is going to probably have some sediment into the river and affect the water quality. Can we go? And these are the pineapple farms that are in the area. It's one of the largest. The area is one of the largest exporters of pineapples in the world, and it's quite a large industry there. So the road is beneficial to there. And this is a picture that I took in Costa Rica. So that's all.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions?
Let me start. Just a quick question. The original demarcation of that entrance, or that the mouth of the river.
Yes.
I mean, how did that come about? That one of the state owns the river itself, but the other only has some kind of rite of passage.
That's what they determined in the whenever they were working out the treaty in the 1850s. They just said that Nicaragua has sovereignty over the river, but Costa Rica has the right to use the river for commercial purposes. And the language that they used was con objetos de comercio or something like that. And
for commercial purposes, yeah.
Before the International Court, they had to determine what de objetos meant, and Costa Rica argued for a more broad, abstract interpretation that would allow them to have rights for commerce and tourism. And Nicaragua wanted to say it was only for articles of commerce, so only things that were being shipped as a commercial export were to be allowed, and they had to have like a passport and everything.
Right.
The court ultimately went with the abstract interpretation and allowed tourism and other commercial uses for the river.
Right. Interesting. Any other questions?
It's a little bit different than what we've done in the past, or the rivers that we've talked about, since we've talked about the middle of the river being the boundary between the countries. But in this case, Nicaragua actually has sovereignty over the river, and the boundary is the right-hand bank.
Yeah. That's actually not uncommon. There's a number of cases. Actually, if I remember correctly, the Potomac River has the exact same situation where I think Maryland owns the river up until the far bank. Or Virginia, I can't remember exactly who, but they went to the U.S. Supreme Court over a similar kind of claim. But I didn't know that Nicaragua and Costa Rica had the same situation.
Well, the San Juan River, it actually starts at the base of Lake Nicaragua,
right,
and it runs all the way. So a lot of the river is actually solely in Nicaragua's territory. So that might have been why they decided to give the river to Nicaragua.
Right, entirely. Interesting. Any questions from College Station or Galveston? Nope. All right, then we'll move on.
I have a question. I was out checking with one of my guys, Robbie Christensen, not about the presentation, about the presentation, but Robbie works for a consulting firm, and they've been reduced in business, and so he makes sure that he gets billable hours, which as an attorney you will understand. And so I told him that by getting this on the speakerphone, it would not be a good thing, but will this presentation be up on the web so he can watch it?
Sure.
Yep.
Good.
The slides will be up, and I believe College Station is recording all of these. So.
Okay, great. Well, I told him to stay out there and keep building up those billable hours, because that's what life's all about outside. Thank you.
All right, so now we have Miss Yang.
Let's get everybody set up. We'll just take a minute or two.
We should probably tell them what we're doing.
Well, let's get them all at once. Can you stand up and just tell them we're loading? Hey, Matt, go to us so we can read back to Gabriel.
Hey, they can hear you.
Hey, Gabriel, we're just loading all our PowerPoints into a computer here, so it'll take another 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay. And Ron, as your students are giving their presentation, if you or Sari or someone could keep track of time there.
All right, 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 minutes with, I mean, if they go over, that's fine, but absolute maximum is 15, so we can make sure we get everybody.
Will do. Stand up with 2 minutes left, okay? So we'll give you 10 or 11 minutes and I'll stand up. Would you like it a little quicker than that?
I could be a timekeeper.
Okay.
Yeah, because mine's at like
I'll,
11 minutes, I think.
Okay, you're all set on that?
I'll do 5 minutes and then 10 minutes.
Okay.
Cool. Sounds good. Just got
Okay. 1 minute.
so many different slides.
It has the- Perfect. Okay, I don't know if you need to get on mic. Perfect. No. So I'm gonna just log out here. So you go.
I wore a jacket in here today and it's warm.
I know.
I'll do 5 minutes and 10 minutes. You don't want to know when 5 minutes is?
Just show her 10
just
minutes.
10 minutes.
And
Okay.
then you have 1 minute to wrap up.
I don't care. I'm just keeping time. Huh? I just added this so that's like a
Yeah. Are you on a desktop?
like I'm not gonna go.
Let's make sure you're on the desktop.
I have it. I want to give it the law.
I just click and drag.
Put an article. Something boring.
Yeah, I'm a Mac person.
No, mine is actually too exciting, so I want to make it look boring.
Thank you.
Doing good? I don't feel like shit.
Hello,
That is good.
I'm Man Young from College Station. Can everybody see my slides?
No. Don't worry, I haven't started yet. We'll wait till the slides are. There they are.
Okay. So today my presentation will be about sustainable water resources management of the River Mekong. So there will be 5 major issues I want to raise for this region. So first, I would like to give some background of the information of the Mekong River Basin. And also, every time when people mention about Mekong, it's a hot spot, and yet it's also full of conflicts and issues. And also, I especially want to focusing on what's the dam issue of the Mekong River, of the River Mekong, because I personally think that's a transboundary water crisis of that region, and also to analysis the current institution of the River Mekong. So last but not least, here I propose some of the thoughts on future cooperation mechanism in that region. Okay, so first I would like to give background of the Mekong River Basin. As you can see the map on the left-hand side, along the river Mekong, there are 5 countries, and this river extends for 1,400 kilometers. That's the river in Asia. And also, see the upper Mekong region is 2 countries there. One is China, one is Myanmar. And Laos is a middle stream country. It's really interesting because Laos as a country occupies 60% of the watershed of River Mekong, and Vietnam, Cambodia, located in the downstream of River Mekong. So the people along the river basin depend on river for food, income, transportation, and other needs. And also, the River Mekong has significance of...
College Station, we just lost you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, could you grab one of the guys here?
Oh, yes.
Huh.
I know on holidays,
Hello? Hello?
I love the,
He loves everything shut down.
what? You're not finding anything you know?
I love all of it. That's the problem.
I don't think I have.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Here you in Galveston.
Completely shut down. I don't know what happened.
Where'd you go eat at, Joy? Where'd you end up eating at?
Rodeo goes.
You just go on.
It's really
Is
good.
that all it is?
Yeah.
I
There.
hope so.
The end, I kind of out. We call it an early night. We had a margarita.
Okay, so it's
When we got through and decided we were too tired to go out.
5 people.
Oh, yeah, how did the ring that thing go?
We left at like midnight.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Huh, that's weird.
What? What?
Hair is really warm.
Yeah, I did it in 20 seconds.
20
Hey,
seconds.
this is Fort Worth. We had lost you, but we're back on, so if you want to move forward.
What? Ryan, are you counting the time? Okay. Okay, so I just briefly introduced the roadmap. Now, the first is background information of River Mekong, and then why people call the Mekong River the hotspot? Because there are several international development banks and the private sector in that region both rely on the water resources development as a way to spur the economic growth and ending the poverty. And especially the ADB, Asian Development Bank, they have Greater Mekong Sub-Regional Initiative. So it's regard this basin as the same as an engine for engineer infrastructure and regional transportation grid and tourist attraction. And also, due to the significant vulnerability of that region to the climate change, it has really becoming the international hotspot for climate change projects. And so while it's a hotspot, but also it's a conflict spot because it's undergoing severe poverty. I mean, all the 5 countries there, and also they have really a long history of transboundary water disputes and fishery disputes. And in recent decades, 10 or 20 years, the revival of building a series of dams really present a serious threat in that region. And also, plus the poor social infrastructure in that region, the government, and quite recently, there are ongoing armed conflict between countries, especially China, Laos, Cambodia, among these 3 countries. And also the unbalanced development, like the country of Laos, Cambodia, and Myanmar, they are the most impoverished places and country of River Mekong. So I would like to specifically emphasize for the dam issue of the River Mekong. So as the map on the left-hand side, as you can see, the green dots there is under construction. And the red one, it will be proposed to be constructed in next 20 years. So it mainly will be in country of Laos, Cambodia. And now there will be 11 mainstream hydropower dams in next 20 years. And the dam history is dating back to 1960s. And however, in 1994, it has been stopped for a while because it's really considered the impact of the fishery and the people's displacement in that region. And of course, in China's dam construction in the upper Mekong, it really caused problems, like especially along the Thai and Lao border, because it's really reduced the fish resources, changing the water levels, and some other severe issues for the local livelihoods. And then let's move to the next to see what's the current institution agreement of River Mekong. So of course, the Mekong River Commission is a very important institution for that river basin. It governs and allocation the utilization of Mekong River's water by 4 countries. Well, we totally there are 5 countries, but there are 4 countries involved in this. And I think it's pretty effective in terms of they have the agreements, and also they have specific procedures for the data and information exchange, water use, and the water quality, and so on. But still, I'm thinking there are some inefficient of the current institution of Mekong River Commission, because in contrast to Mekong Committee, this Mekong River Commission is really an international organizations, and it's not under the auspice of UN. And secondly, I think that's the most interesting part. The Mekong River Commission can only put an end to the disputes if the concerned party are satisfied. But the truth is that in the end, no one can reach the consensus in the end. So it's really hard. And also the agreement, due to their state-centered approach, sometimes that's agreement between 2 countries, but when the issue happens specifically on local, it cannot tackle that issue. And also, this Mekong River Commission involved 4 countries. It's lack of China's participation and commitment. So in that sense, I think China is an elephant in the room. So, and also there are some unsolved problems there. I think the countries tend to, when talk about the economic promote sustainable development among the country, and each country really relying on the international agreements. But when it comes to the environmental degradation, it's always moved cross borders towards transboundary issue. And also the current sovereignty is inadequate when you talk about the holistic environmental governance in a large scale, because every country have their own sovereignty. So it's really really hard to push everyone reach the consensus in the end. And also the regional economic balance. It's mainly when all the stakeholders they talking on the table, they cannot talk in the same voice because they have different priorities. And the cooperation under transboundary agreements within country is not so effective as people really want to. So since we have so many issues and problems, so what we should do next? So here I proposed the multi-dimensional sovereignty. So the main goal of this is to addressing the following 4 issues, and also I think talking about multi-dimensional sovereignty is really to incorporate crossing borders cooperation under this issue. And I think the future solution is to promoting environmental securitization across the country and the regional level. And so, and also each country should recognize that they both have the social constructed and also the multi-dimensional sovereignty of Mekong River. Like each country have their sovereignty on their national level, and they have the sovereignty on their riparian level, but also as a whole Mekong region basin, they have the sovereignty on that sense. And so, and also to include more optimal, effective indicators for future cross-border cooperation, like social, environmental, and economic and governance issue to pursue a really river basin level development in that sense. So I think that's it. Thank you. Is there any questions?
Station questions?
I've got a couple questions if nobody else does. Jim? Yeah, go ahead.
In your proposal to overcome some of the deficiencies in the MRC, what do you see as the biggest roadblock to the four countries adopting your proposals? Do you have a solution for that roadblock?
Sorry, can you repeat your question again?
So, in your proposal, what do you think would be the biggest issue or the biggest reason the countries would not adopt your proposal?
I think there will be the questions when the countries they really want to join, they will consider what's the economic incentive for them to join this. And now, since China, even though they're building the dams in the past, and in the future, they are not building the dams in the upper Mekong, but for other countries, the Laos. So China is sending the money for other countries in the midstream of Mekong to building dams. So I guess it's really how to provide incentives for a country to join this mechanism. I think the current biggest block is the still different country, different perspective about their sovereignty. So I personally also doubt they really want to join this multi-dimensional sovereignty because sometimes they have to sacrifice something for their country. So I'm not sure people really want to do that. So
I have a question. In Galveston, you said that countries might have to sacrifice something.
yeah.
All of these things. Did you look into the amount of dependency on fisheries that the people in various segments are all up and down Mekong rely on the fisheries for subsistence, for economics, for sales? I see you had a couple of baskets there, and I'd like to know the species when we get through. But what's the effect of all of this on fisheries and the following on effect to the people? Fisheries are mainstay of the diet. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think I spent 2 months in Thailand, and I specifically see how people's life rely heavily on fish. I mean, their homes is in boats, and everyone near the river, and they eat fish every day. I mean, so and really, I think if some other country building the dams, the region for electricity, but the fish for the people of Bangkok, and it's really their way to make a living. So I think in that sense, it's how the 5 countries, they really come up idea. It's like something you can sacrifice maybe it's okay for you for the specific country, but for other country like Laos, they're really important for their human rights to life or other very important issue. So is that
But fisheries is not something that they can sacrifice without doing great harm to all 5 countries. Is that correct?
Yeah, right. I mean, so like if the country they still want building a dam, there's some way that you can build in a more sustainable way. Like it's not block the fish 100%, but you can design in a more way that you can have electricity at the same time, but also for at least 4 months you can ensure the people near the river can have the fish. So there are really the methods there, but the truth is that all the people who designed the dams, they didn't think about that. They just want to have more electricity after their infrastructure. So I think my idea is really to enhance, to improve when they are designing the dam at the first place, how to think about the people who along the river, like Thailand or Laos, they really need the fish, even though they have have the dams there. So is that
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
So we'll move on now to Mr. King.
Would you please load the slides? We are not able to project them from here.
Okay, hold on. So just tell me when to move the slides forward.
Thank you.
And Dr. Linton, if you could keep time for Mr. King.
We are doing that.
Great.
Well, thank you for this privilege to present my concept of managing the Texas stormwater utilization and privatization. This will encompass an understanding of how the laws actually will allow us to participate in not only basin transfer, but interboundary transfer. Now, our neighbor, specifically to the west and to the south, being Mexico, we will concentrate on 2 different programs that will affect both the water quality of the Rio Grande and the ability to manage the agricultural area located between the 2 prominent reservoirs that are on the Rio Grande River. In order to start on a project like this, there isn't any question. You first must have order. Order must be maintained in order for any project, especially an interboundary process, to work. There's been several attempts to work very closely with Mexico on developing an understanding of how important water quality is. Some progress has been made, but not nearly enough to go forward with a program of this magnitude. So I want to start by introducing you to the supply system. This is the dominant river system that is located in Texas. We have an abundance of surface water. We have approximately 27 million acre-feet of water that moves through this system on an annual basis. Now, that doesn't include the spikes that are encountered due to stormwater inclusion. Those inclusions can be as much as 1/4 of that 27 million acre-feet at any one point in time. In May of this year, we experienced an episode where if you spread the water that fell during that time frame in May, if you spread that water out over the state of Texas, it would be 9.5 inches deep over the entire state. Unfortunately, over 95% of that water was lost to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, there are certainly some people that will claim that there are beneficiary results that happen, but if you look at the magnitude and the loss that actually proves to, it was in fact a major loss. So here's the supply system. Now, if you look at the border of the Rio Grande with Mexico and Texas, you will note two large reservoirs. Amistad just about in the middle of the picture, and the Falcon Reservoir down at the lower end of the valley. Those two reservoirs have very, very meaningful applications in that the agriculture that is supported in that area, both in Mexico as well as the Valley of Texas, is extremely important. We always need to feed our population. There's no question about that. And in order to do that, we need a water supply to manage that. So when we start talking about how we're going to manage this asset, the asset that we have, the first thing that comes to mind is what are the rules that govern the possibility of this taking place. If you'd please move to the next slide. Uh-oh.
Here we go.
All right, in this, I hope that you're able to read this. If not, you can very quickly look up the Texas Water Code, section 11.0.21. There isn't any question as to who owns the water, surface water, in the state of Texas. It is absolutely owned by the state. And it is the property of the state. One of the provisions that we will put forward into this meeting with the GLO is that the GLO declare specifically surface water, which is defined right here. Surface water includes all of the water under ordinary flow, underflow, tides of every flowing river, natural stream, lake, bay, arm of the Gulf, and storm water, flood water, or rainwater of every river, every natural stream, canyon, ravine, depression, and watershed. Once this water reaches a water course, it becomes the state of Texas property. So therefore, with strong policy and a reasonable asset value for this water, which I will mention to you that there are terms that would include $70 an acre foot to $140 an acre foot for this water. With that value associated with it, then the privatization of this natural resource can occur. The precedent that would govern this is exactly how the state of Texas handled its natural resources, specifically natural gas and oil produced from state property. Once that was privatized, then that natural resource funded a significant proportion of the public school fund, which that is the charter of the General Land Office of Texas, is to take revenue from the sale of its natural resources to fund the public school fund. So this vehicle of ownership, policy to support and advise as to ownership, and the establishment of a price associated with the asset, then you begin to develop what is termed a sustainable possibility to advance the sale of the state's asset, both domestically as well as internationally. If you would, please move to the next slide. In order to ensure that this program can move forward, there has to be a recognition of the problems that we're facing. What you see is Galveston Bay, and what you see in Galveston Bay is the result of stormwater inclusion from primarily the Trinity River, as well as the San Jacinto River, as well as the runoff from the metropolitan area of Houston. If you will look down toward the Bolivar Peninsula, you will see the resulting plume that is moving into the Gulf of Mexico. We've already learned this lesson once before in the example of the delta that's around the Mississippi. The hypoxic zone that's there, we are actually developing the premise by which a hypoxic zone could be established in this region. Today, the salinity line is moved down to Smith Point. Now, Professor Eckstein, if you would please just point to the projection that goes into the Galveston Bay. Move your cursor up just slightly, and you will see that point a little bit higher, about halfway up in the picture. There, right there. That is Smith Point. And today the salinity line has been pushed to Smith Point, meaning that the upper end of Galveston Bay is essentially brackish water, which are very, very low salinity and absolutely conducive to forming the problems that are at hand. So by capturing this amount of water, this is the only system that can handle the amount of runoff produced by stormwater. All right, so that's an example of where we can start. Now, before you can start, you have to have the support of various regulatory agencies in order to make that happen. And that means both domestically and internationally. The Region 4 Planning Group is responsible for answering directly to the Texas Water Development Board, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, and the Office of the Rio Grande Water Master will need to work together on how this asset is used. The International Boundary Water Commission and the U.S. Department of Agriculture Cooperative Extension Service also will be necessary to validate the injection of this water. So let's move to the next slide, please. Yes, 1 minute. Okay. This is an example of a typical watershed in Texas. That is the Colorado River. Let's advance to the next slide, please. This is the result of the Colorado River dumping into Matagorda Bay. Same results, in that the amount of overflow into the bay has created, or inflow of fresh water into the bay has created enough problems to justify coming about with the system to do this. Now, if you would, please go back to the first slide, and I'll wrap this up. The plan consists of a pumping system that would tie the upper ends of Galveston Bay, the Freeport Basin, and the Matagorda Bay into an aqueduct system that would move to the west and actually connect with the Rio Grande River halfway between Amistad and Falcon. The purpose of this program is to deliver 1 million acre-feet a year of water into this section of the Rio Grande. The results of this would be an interboundary treaty that would allow the use of this asset to improve not only water quality, but to ensure the value of the agricultural crops that would be affected by this project. Now, I'll end by saying this. Water rights in Texas are very precarious in that they're designed around a system that is called, by all means, something for nothing. In other words, we pay no money for that system. Now, if you want to write another saga in the tragedy of the commons, then we need to keep this practice up. But I advocate that we assign value to this water, privatize it, and let industry ensure that the efficiency is high enough to make it work. Something for nothing never works. With that, I'll close.
Questions? All right, my question is, how will this inflow of water going into the Rio Grande affect allocations between U.S. and Mexico?
With the problem that we're facing now is we have a backlog or a commitment to Mexico to where it's going to take probably 500,000 acre-feet of water a year for about 5 years to catch up with what we already owe them.
What the U.S. owes Mexico?
Yes. The trade-off is going to be that if the water quality issue pertaining to the colonias that are located near the Laredo area If the water quality issues there are addressed, which is primarily the raw sewage that is being drained out of the Colonias into the Rio Grande, the amount of water that would be produced in this exchange would more than offset not only what we owe the country of Mexico, but also what is necessary to support their agricultural needs in the same region. Now, Mexico, once we get this debt paid, would be able to buy water at the fair value or market price, which would then be in a trade agreement, which could be offset by additional waters that could come in from inflows that they could develop, they being Mexico.
When you say that there's a debt that the U.S. owes to Mexico, is that down the Rio or the Pecos, or where's that the debt from?
Yes, it is related to the Pecos River.
Okay. Good, interesting. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you.
You're
We'll
welcome.
now move to College Station and Miss Wilcox.
So, hi, I'm Maggie Wilcox, and I am going to be talking about today water as a source of conflict or of cooperation. There's been a lot of talk lately that the future of conflict is going to be about water wars, that they will be, wars will be fought over water. And I really wanted to get to the bottom, like, is this really true? Like, is this going to be the future of warfare? And so in doing so, I first had to look like, well, what is conflict and what is cooperation? And then I had to look at kind of just the foundation that that scholars and history can show us of where, conflict could happen over water. And then in those, there's some prevailing understandings of from scholars that why they believe that water is going to be the source of conflict. So after I did that, I looked and I questioned, well, is that really the reality? And what I saw is that, no, I don't really think it is. And that we saw cooperation a lot more than we ever saw conflict, actually like 1,000 times more than we ever saw conflict. And so through 3 different case studies that I'm going to lay out for you all, where in regions that are, plagued with conflict, when it came to water, cooperation prevailed. And then I'll end with some concluding remarks. So what is conflict? I mean, you can have a dictionary, definition of that conflicts, like a struggle for power or it's an argument between people. But in the international system, conflict's a little bit different. I think and this is maybe the, international relations theorist in me, but conflict for me arises from the kind of the idea of the state of anarchy that we get in the international system. That's what the state we lived in before we formed government, where you could never trust anybody. You had to sleep with one eye open, and there was always just conflict. There was no cooperation because it was one man for himself. So we formed government to protect some liberties, protect our freedom, but the international system in itself is anarchic. There is no one world government. There is no one police force to protect the nation states. And so when you have tensions, it tends to lead to, that's to me is conflict. And I also think conflict's not just a verbal lashing or threats that states might give each other. I really do think conflict is more a reference to armed conflict with the violence that you see in wars that result in the deaths that you see from wars. So conflict antonym, which is cooperation, and we all know what it means to cooperate, but cooperation is a way for states in this anarchic system to get out of that. And it's the process of, working together towards the same end. So they, will establish institutions to establish and foster this cooperation. So either like the UN or even like a set of norms. There's a thing called CEDAW, which is the Convention on the Elimination Against Discrimination of All Women. The United States actually hasn't even signed it. Some states have, some states haven't. But everybody is trying to abide by this set of norms to, promote gender equality. I mean, that's just one example of how norms cannot be codified, but still adhered to in the international system. So with that, we have this foundational information that, over more than 1 billion people lack access to safe water. You have 3 billion people who lack adequate sanitation, which is going to cause water-related deaths. And then you have even more, and this is where the scholars who believe that the future of conflict is going to be on water wars, they look to the over 260 rivers around the world that are shared by 2 or more countries. And these international watersheds are 60% of the world's fresh water supply and home to 40% of the world's population. So you've now just taken what was already a limited amount of water and put 40% of the world's population, and they're all trying to vie for this. Second, is that as water, we even had Kofi Annan, he's the former Secretary General to the UN. He addressed this, the General Assembly back in 2001 and said that fierce competition for fresh water may well become a source of conflict and wars in the future. We've seen this in the past of just limited violence. We saw it from Syria and Israel in the 1950s over Israel, a development project of Israel. We've seen it in Sudan, in Egypt along the Nile over territorial disputes along the river. But no single war has ever happened. And so what scholars that do believe of water conflicts, they do believe that it's a geography thing. Like that's their main argument, that the conflicts are going to be between the upstream riparian states that are going to advocate more of like an, like equitable share of the water, but downstream riparian states are more concerned about no significant harm to the water. They really care about the quality of water because they're already not getting as much water, but they don't want that water that they are getting to be highly polluted and not usable anymore. So I said that, but no single war has ever been fought over water. And we have seen areas where just political instability just, will last for decades and decades, but when it comes to the water, we actually see cooperation. And so with that, I have the 3 case studies, and the first one is the Jordan River. So the Jordan River is, as you all know, located in the Middle East. It's a river with shared between Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Israel, and Palestine. Everybody knows of the decades-long war between Israel and the Arab states. And so the political violence and everything that's happened, and that is persisting, but when it comes to water, they've actually have now 3 agreements, and where cooperation for water is actually working out very well. So the first agreement that they had was between Jordan and Syria, and they had 2 agreements actually between them in 1953 and 1987, and this is mainly in regards to dam and use of water for agricultural and hydropower. You also have the Israel-Jordan agreement that was signed in 1994, and that deals actually with the allocation and the storage of water, and also to prevent pollution. And then finally is the Israel-Palestine kind of agreement. Even though Palestine isn't granted rights to the Jordan River, it is still part of the Oslo II Accords, in which a joint water committee will manage waters into the West Bank. So the second case study I looked at was the Mekong River. As Mon had said, it's a hot spot, and it's also a conflict zone. Mainly a conflict zone because you have one of the largest countries in the world, China, not wanting to be a part of the cooperative process in managing the Mekong River Basin. But the Mekong River, and so a lot of issues come over development of dams along the river. There's been political tensions over the navigation and also fisheries on the river. But what has happened is it was actually the first successful go at cooperating.